Summing up his position against the motion, Guns Reduce Crime, Paul Helmke, President of the Brady Campaign and Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence.
Again, I want to thank all of our listeners tonight. The question you have to ask yourself is, did the other side prove its case? Did they prove that guns reduce crime? You haven't really heard any evidence to show that it did. And I think the question you should ask yourself to just get a gut check on this is, when you're at the next sporting event, when you're sitting in the restaurant, would you feel safer thinking that everyone had a gun or that no one had a gun? The reason you react that way is because you know instinctively that we make it too easy for dangerous people and people that don't know the responsibilities that go with guns to get guns. I ask the question, why aren't we the safest country in the world if we've got so many guns? It's because we make it too easy. We don't know where those guns are. We don't know who has the guns. And if you have a gun, and again, I'm not anti-gun, and if you want a gun and understand the responsibilities, fine. But there are responsibilities that go with it. The Supreme Court made it clear there are restrictions that go with it. Where do the guns come from that the bad guys, that the gang members get? They steal them from people like you. They steal them from gun stores who quote, lose 30,000 guns every year. They get them through straw purchases. There are no limits on the number of guns you can buy at one time. There are very few limits on the type of guns you can buy. In most places in this country, there really are no laws, very few laws restricting who gets guns. We make it too easy for dangerous people to get guns. The way to reduce crime is to do things like background checks, fight the illegal trafficking in guns, say that some guns should not be in the hands of the civilian population. Those are things that can help take down the crime rates in our communities, not flooding our communities with more guns. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul Helmke. And our final speaker, as we approach the moment of truth, speaking for the motion, Guns Reduce Crime, Gary Kleck, Professor of Criminology and Criminal Justice at Florida State.
You may remember I started out my opening remarks by saying you sometimes need to listen for the silences, and I think the panelists on the other side demonstrated that, because they didn't, in fact, address the evidence that we presented. Paul Helmke insists we didn't present any evidence. We cited some of the most thoroughly vetted scientific evidence we have on the question. Study after study repeatedly showed the same thing. It showed defensive gun use is common. It showed defensive gun use is effective. It shows that after we pass these shall issue carry laws and make it easy to get a carry permit, crime does not go up. It's also a sign of a weakness of a particular position when people have to misstate what the issue is. Remember, the proposition was that guns reduce crime. Okay, do they make you safer to have a gun? Well, we didn't really hear anything about that. Instead, we hear Paul Helmke saying, would you feel comfortable with everybody having a gun? Well, of course, that's not the issue. Nobody here proposed that because, of course, everybody includes lunatics, convicted murderers, robbers, rapists, and so on. It's not the proposition. And in fact, no one here even secretly thinks that we ought to do that. It's not an issue. So why not confront the issue? Do guns reduce crime? Well, in fact, guns in the hands of non-criminals, guns in the hands of crime victims do make them safer. So what does this imply for policy? Well, the implication for policy is let's do what we can to keep guns away from criminals, but that should not include taking them away from non-criminals who would use them to save their lives, to prevent the completion of rapes and robberies, to prevent injuries, and to prevent the loss of property. We should instead do what commonsensically most of America has been doing for decades, which is moderate controls aimed at preventing criminals from getting guns, but without denying them to non-criminals.
That was Gary Kleck. Thank you. And now we are at the moment of truth. You can turn once again to the keypads by your seats, and we want you to vote on our motion, Guns Reduce Crime. Press 1 if you support the motion. Press number 2 if you are against. Press number 3 if you are undecided. And now the results. Before the debate, 13% were for the motion, 60% were against, and 27% were undecided. After the debate, There was movement on all fronts, but it looks as though the motion, the side for the motion moved more of you. 27% agree with the motion that guns reduce crime, 64% of you disagree, and now only 10% of you are undecided. So it was a close call with a little bit of an edge to those for the motion in terms of moving and changing minds. Congratulations to all of our panelists.